number. And just like Bruno did with his friend, we are going to split our number into 2 groups. One for me, one for you. One for me, one for you. One for me, one for you. I'm going to keep doing that until I get all the way up to my number, which right now is 13, because we're determining if 13 is even or odd. So let's go. One for me, one for you. I'm going to count while I'm doing this, up to 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I'm stopping at 13 because that's my number. Let's see how many are in each group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on this side. You got 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on this side. I got 7. There's 1 extra on my side. So I know that this number is odd because I don't have the same amount. It's odd because I have 1 extra on this side and I didn't have an extra one to put on that side. That was so short.
I was going to say, 1 minute and 49 seconds left. I don't know why you're all stressed out about that. Terrific. Thank you, Blair. Okay, so I'll give everyone just 30 seconds to collect their thoughts. I'm going to share my screen again, if that's okay. Yeah. And really jot down, multitasking here. Where are we? Here we are. Jot down how Blair connected the steps back to that conceptual understanding. And then also, how did she make it sticky? And we saw she made it very concise. So think about also how she made it concise. I'll give you guys 30 seconds and then we'll share out. Let's start with the first one. What did Blair specifically do to connect the steps back to that conceptual understanding?
Sorry, go ahead, Liz.
All right. I just like how she had so many ways to check to make sure that is it odd or is it even. She split it up, but then she didn't even have to count 2, 4, 6. She was just okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and counted all the way up to 13. And then I like how she checked the second time to be I've got 6 on this side, write it down. Oh, I've got 7 on this side. And then she did, I've got this one extra, and circled it. So all those steps to double check and make sure, is this group even or is it odd? And if they miss it the first time, there's 2 more steps to double check to make sure, is this group even or odd? So I like that.
Nick, did you have something to add?
Lizzie said everything I was going to say.
You guys are so in sync. Everyone's Tori said what I was going to say. Symphony said what I was going to say. Cornay said what I was going to say. What else?
Something I really love that Blair did is she talked about it generally, what we do every time, before she made it about this example specifically. So she first was okay, I have this number and I have to figure out if it's even or odd by putting it into 2 groups. So remember, I'm going to draw that line. I'm going to think 1 for you, 1 for me. And she was talking very generally about what we do every time we're trying to figure out if something's even or odd. And then she made it about the number 13 specifically, which just really highlights for kids that this is a transferable skill. And we're going to use this strategy for all of the numbers, not just for 13. It's not about 13. It's about you conceptually knowing that I have to divide between 2 groups to see if I have the same amount in each. So I love that little slight distinction. And it took you an extra 7 seconds. It's so worth it. That was beautiful.
Yeah, and even to add to that, 2 seconds of time was also spent relating it back to the video. If you heard her say, just like Bruno did with his friend, right? That is the story in which this is grounded and in which we want kids to ground their understanding. And Blair very quickly said, didn't, belabor the point, but just said, just like Bruno did with his dog treats or his crayons. And that was a really nice way to connect this into the learning they'd already done. What else?
She
also connected it to the video by doing the one for me, one for you, one for me, one for you. And I love how Blair, she actually, like, she went through the steps and she stated them and then showed them. So it's like you can't miss a step because she's showing you exactly what she's doing.
Yeah, totally. But it wasn't like, what's step one, everybody? Let me do it. What's step two? Right? It felt really natural, and it felt really conceptual. What about the second question? How did she make it sticky and concise?
I'll say I think what made it really sticky was her model, but then also like at the end where she's like, okay, this number's odd because this doesn't have the same amount, or like they don't have the same amount, and just like those few words, like, she was able to like sum it up like this is not even because I have this one left over. Made it really clear, but like of the difference between even and odd.
What else?
I think she made it really clear when she circled that extra one too, to show like this one has one more, so they're not equal.
Yeah. Again, I feel like we said this last week. It was really clear the work that Blair wants her kids to show without it being a matter of compliance. Like, now I have to go circle my one extra. It was like a part of her thinking, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's this one extra one, which tells me it's odd. But you can imagine when she's giving feedback on work, giving that feedback in that way that's less about compliance.
And Susannah, that's exactly why I do it like that. So that during group practice and independent practice, I'm not like, where's your step 3? I'm like, well, how do I know that it's even or odd? I need to see your extra, or I need to see that they're even. I need to see your extra, or I need to see that it's even. I need to see your extra, or I need to see that it's even. And I like,
exactly.
Those are the words I can say over and over.
Exactly, right? And she can also be like, remember when we were doing 13 together and there was that one silly extra one? I circled it, so I remembered that I had that extra one. Like, it really helps kids connect it back to that idea. Anything else? One thing? Yeah, Lizzie, were you going to go?
I just said I think she made it concise by like not going like too overboard with it, like asking too many questions for like the students to explain. Just kind of showing them like very matter of factly, like this is what we do. Because then I feel like sometimes you can go down like a rabbit hole, but she like very much did it like quickly and efficiently.
Yeah.
Also love that Blair wasn't too wordy. I know last week when we had our meeting, we talked about like how sometimes we can be like too wordy as teachers, and I think that Blair was like super like straight to the point, and it was really easy to follow as well.
Totally. And one thing I wanted to note was she was really straight to the point, but she actually tucked in, like she anticipated a few misconceptions and tucked them into her model. Did anyone else catch that? Can anyone name where she did that?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you noticed.
I got you, Blair. Did anyone else catch it?
I only noticed this because after I watched the second day video, I was like, oh, I need to kind of plant seeds on.
Yeah. Symphony, did you have?
Was it, I could be wrong too, but was it like how she counted it up at the end?
Yeah, say more.
I'm feeling like us counting up each side is kind of helping them determine literally what is even and odd based off the total. And so like you ahead of time went through like a really quick way of how you can count it up. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think one place that kids will make a mistake is one for you, one for me, one for you, one for me, finish, and then not go back and count. And Blair really slowed down though. Now I have to go back and count how many I have and how many you have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? Like that's a place where we might see kids struggle. And she really slowed down there to be like, I'm not done. keep going. What else? Did anyone else catch another place? There were a few places I caught. If someone's writing something in the chat, you know I'm not great at checking the chat. Okay. Well, I'll name where I caught it. She talked about 13, and she talked about twice being like, now I'm only going to count up to 13. 13 is my total, so I'm going to stop when I get to 13. And I think she said that at 2 different times. And then also, kids get really into the one for you, one for me, one for you, one for me, that they're not counting. And so she started with the one for you, one for me, but then she said, well, I have to count as I'm passing out one for you, one for me. Because we'll see kids do one for you, one for me, one for you, one for me, one for you, one for me, like keep going. And then they're like, I don't know what number I'm at. And so she did a really nice job of explaining why she was doing it and then being like, but I have to count as I go. And when I get to 13, I'm going to stop. And then when she got to 13, she was like, oh, I'm at 13. I got to stop. And I think those are 2 places that we anticipate kids struggling. And she built those in very quickly and very lightly. Did you have something to add, Blair?
Yeah. Yes. I feel like they're just going to like keep on going. And the one for me, one for you is like really catchy. So I was like making it very dramatic because I want them to like know what I'm doing. But I feel like the first page in the group practice, I would kind of almost still do it and be like, when the second I'm done, I get to 22 or whatever it was, you're going to put up your hands and tell me to stop. So that, like, to reinforce that again. Like, all right, here I go. You're going to tell me when to stop. We're going all the way up to 22 and, like, do that one more time before they're on their own.
I love that. Yeah, that was another thing I was going to add, that the way that Blair made it sticky. I don't know if you guys could see her as she was doing it, but she was doing this, like, one for you, one for me, one for you, one, like this little dance. And you can see you can imagine kids being like, one for you, one for me, right? Like, it's pretty sticky that way. And so that was another way I wanted to add. Anything else? Okay, thank you, Blair. So we're going to keep going with lesson R47, but like I said, I want us to think of these less as like this day they have to count by 2s and this day they have to make 2 equal groups, and more as just the concept. And we're going to go into we're going to go into both of them. It's labeled R47, but it's truly both of them, around student error. And so last week we talked about giving feedback, and like Nick touched on quickly, we talked about not all errors are equal, and we don't spend the same amount of time on every error. But I did just want to give us a very general framework that we could use for giving feedback. And so research around feedback says that it should be really specific and it should be really timely. It should happen as close to when the error happens as possible. So just use that as I like to frame as I'm talking. So when we give a student feedback, we want to name the last thing that they did right, and we want to be really, really specific here. We want it to be grounded in the math. So actually, can I hear like some non-examples of what naming the last thing the student did right might sound like that aren't specific?
Good job.
Good job.
You showed your work.
You showed your work.
Yeah, like your work looks good.
Your work looks good.
Keep up the good work.
Keep up the good work.
Oh my gosh, this is such a good reminder, guys, because I say these things all the time. I'm literally like writing like.
And you know, as I was saying that, it's not that those do not have a place in our classroom, especially a virtual classroom where we're trying to keep momentum and build momentum. I think of this specifically as when you're like, I see Tori and I want to talk to Tori specifically about this problem, right? And so I don't want to say that none of that should ever come out of your mouth, because that is the way we keep momentum, we build community. But I think when you're thinking about like, I'm going to talk to Tori about this one specific problem, we shouldn't just say, I see you showed your work, great job, right? We want to be as specific as possible. And I'm going to give you guys an example of this. After we name the last thing they did right and celebrate it, we name the error and we connect it back to that conceptual understanding. That might be connecting it back to the video, connecting it back to a story that it's grounded in. Then we model and correct the work. And then, of course, we watch and encourage. And that may sound a lot like what we just heard. So we're going to sort of use this protocol to look at an error, and then I'm going to model what a piece of feedback might sound like, and then we're going to try it in breakout rooms. So here is Lewis. And this is his work. Sorry, I'm trying to move around the boxes so I can see it. I would love, I'm going to give you guys like 30 seconds to just look at it, dissect it, think about it, and then we're going to go through the 5 steps. So you can start looking at it, think about what's the last thing they did right, think about the error, tie it back to the misconception. What might your model and correction sound like? What might your encouragement sound like? Okay, so what, and obviously when you're not in real time, it's hard to know the last thing the student did right, but like what did Lewis do correctly?
He at least modeled his work correctly.
He modeled his work correctly, and push yourself to think like what might Lewis understand there? What's that evidence of understanding?
I think he understands that there's like one for you, one for me. He's splitting it up into 2 groups because he did that successfully. He has 15 dots in all, and he put them in the right places. Can I keep going, or should I stop?
Yeah, keep going, yeah.
But he didn't like go back to count, like, okay, how many do I have on this side versus how many do I have on that side, to then determine whether if it was even or odd.
Yeah, so right, like Tori just said, what Lewis did right, and then what they did wrong, and then how could we connect this back to when we're giving Lewis feedback? Sorry, I'm laughing because Lewis is my husband's name. I don't know why I put it in. I'm like out of names writing so many story problems. So how could we connect that error back to the conceptual understanding? Without saying, right, so what it might not sound like is go back and check how many are in each group. How could we connect it back to that conceptual understanding? And to Nick's point, sorry, I got to stop talking, but to Nick's point, it doesn't have to be a long paragraph. Like we saw in Blair's model, it could be just a sentence or 2 sentences.
Like, how many did you give yourself and how many did you give me? I don't know. Like, because like the one on the left looks different, so
yeah,
I would be like, should we count them up again? Let's count the ones you gave me and the ones that you gave yourself.
Yeah.
Could like, I really don't know either, but can I say, like, I notice on one side there's more than the other side, but I notice you also have the same amount in each group. So can we go back and recount one for me and one for you, or recount each group?
Yeah, totally. And thinking there, Symphony, about how like this skill can be transferable, right? Like sometimes we may have less on one side and somehow they got drawn bigger and so it looks like there's more. We want to say like, oh, you know, it kind of looks like the groups are the same. It kind of looks like maybe if those were yours, you might have a little more, but I'm not totally sure. So if we're splitting into 2 equal groups, we have to go back and count exactly how many you have and exactly how many I have. Go back and count again, right? Like that idea of a skill that no matter how they look, we're always going to go back and count our groups to make sure they're the same. Other thoughts? Okay, so I'm going to give you just a whole run through of what my feedback to Lewis might sound like, and then we're going to try one in breakout rooms, sort of the same protocol, and then practice. So if if Lewis were my student, I'm now like, why did I name this student Lewis? This is very weird. But I'm going to put my teacher hat on now. So, Lewis, I notice that if you want to figure out if a number's odd or even, you split it into 2 equal groups. You say 1 for me, 1 for you, 1 for me, 1 for you. And you did a really nice job splitting 15 into 2 equal groups. And you even know that if a number can make 2 equal groups, it's even. But when we're splitting numbers into 2 equal groups, it's really, really, really important that we go back and count each group. We want to know exactly how many I got and exactly how many you got. Just like Bruno and Roscoe wanted to figure out exactly how many dog bones or dog treats Roscoe had and exactly how many Bruno had. So I want you to go back to your 2 groups and imagine this side is me and this side is you. Go back and count how many I have and how many you have. And then figure out if your number's odd or even. Then I would watch him do it. Okay, Lewis, remember, anytime you're trying to figure out if a number is odd or even, you do exactly what you just did. You say 1 for me, 1 for you, 1 for me, 1 for you. But you have to go back and count exactly how many I have and exactly how many you have, and then you can figure out whether your number is odd or even. Off you go. Okay. So I would love for you guys now Susannah's up. You guys can see that my creativity is completely exhausted. I'm going to give you guys a minute to look at Susannah's error. If you need to screenshot it, because I'm going to send you guys off to breakout rooms to discuss and then practice. So look at Susannah's error, think about what she did, sort of identify the error, and then go through your protocol. I'm going to go back here to name the last thing she did right or the thing she really understands. Then name the error, connect it back to the conceptual understanding. How might you model or correct it? And then how might you watch and encourage it? I'm going to go back to Susannah's. I'm going to give you guys about 30 seconds to just absorb on your own. And then I'll send you to breakout rooms. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Does anyone need to take a screenshot of this or of this? We're good? Okay, great. So I'm going to send you guys to breakout rooms. I would love for you guys to just put your heads together as teachers first, discuss what the error is, discuss what the misconception is, think about how you could tie it back, and then I would love for you guys all to try on what that feedback might sound like going through those 5 steps. Make sense? Okay. All right. Off. Hold on. I'm going to rearrange these groups for 1 second. Groups are so hard. You know what? I'm not going to rearrange these groups. We're going to have a smattering of groups. All right. Off everybody goes.
Hey there. How are you?
Hi.
Hi.
So, guess I'll say what I would say to a student.
Okay.
What was her name? Susannah. It was Susannah. Wow, Susannah, you did a really great job of splitting 11 items into 2 groups. 1 for me, 1 for you. I don't see where you double check to see how many are on each side. Let's see how many exactly you gave to me and exactly you gave to yourself, because that's the only way to figure out if it's even or odd. We have to see if they're equal and they're even, or if there's 1 extra on your side, then they're odd. And then I would model that for her.
Okay. I mean, that totally works. I was wondering when I first saw it if when the student did like one, I kind of like to your point of like when you were counting along, if that might be like one, like, because if they were counting along, if they were doing one for me, one for you, one for me, one for you, they would have gotten past 11. They would have had to go.
Did she put 11 on each side?
Yeah, she put 11 on each side. And so I'm wondering, like, I definitely can see that you know how to count to 11 because you have 11 on this side and 11 on this side, but I want to think about, like, the total amount. So let's try to do this. Like, I don't know. I would just wonder, like, what.
So maybe I would say, instead of, like, let's see exactly how many, maybe I would say, you did a really great job of making it very clear that you're splitting it into two groups, one for me and one for you. What number, how many are we giving out all together? Remind me how many we're giving out all together. Okay, we're giving out 11 all together. Let's count up and see how many you gave out and then count them. And I would probably count them like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it'd get to like 30. I'd be like, wow, we just passed 11, but we only had 11 to give out. Remember, when you're giving them out, you want to stop at the number you're trying to figure out if it's even or odd.
Yeah, that was tricky.
Yeah. In the past, I've had to like also use like concrete. Objects. Like you only have 11, like cubes. So if it gets to that point, I would have her like get out cubes as well. Like, give me one, give you one, give me one. Like, we have to stop at 11. There's no more left to give out.
Have you guys sent cubes home to kids at all this year?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
I know that at least all the special education kids have them.
Okay.
I'm not sure about everyone as a whole, but I know at least all the special education kids have them.
Okay. How long have you been at Heights?
Yeah. I've been at KIPP. This is my 7th year.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
yeah, so I'm like ancient, I feel like. How long have you been at KIPP?
This is probably year 14.
Yeah.
Yep. It's so weird. Like, you've been here forever, but you still just don't like know everyone. Like it's
for sure.
Virtually impossible at this point.
Right. Exactly.
And you said, but have you been at Heights the entire time? Or?
I was at Spring for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
As well.
Nice.
Yeah. So 5 years at Heights and 2 at Spring.
Okay. Well, I think we are heading back.
All right. Was that enough time? Did people get to practice? Yeah? Okay. Great. I would love to Rebecca, will you just talk about what we were talking about in your breakout room?
I'm on mute. Sorry. I was saying that typically, like in Lizzie's class, when we start guided practice, typically like a student is automatically going to do it this way. And one thing that I really like about the way Lizzie teaches is she typically uses that as a whole class like error corrector, and she does it with the students and corrects it so that they understand that moving forward to do like one for you, one for me.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we were discussing that, like, this may be an error we see quite a bit of. And so, like, there is also a piece here of, like, let's not wait until we see this error to, like, front load this error, even tucking in that piece that Blair did of being like, I'm not going to put 13 in each group. It's just like Bruno and Roscoe only had 8 treats. I only have 13 treats. So I'm going to stop when I get to 13, like, even front loading that. Okay, anyone want to take a stab at whole group, what feedback might sound like in the spirit of sharing across? I was going to say, Tori, it looks like you might be thinking about it. Come on.
Tori's was really good. I will say, I was about to tell her because yours was really good, Tori.
All right, you can go.
I think I can do this. Okay, so Susannah, you did a really good job knowing that when we're determining odd and even numbers, we're splitting them into 2 groups. But we have to remember that we're splitting up that total 11. We're taking that 11 and giving one to you and one to me. I see that you put 11 on each side, and that whole is actually 22. So make sure you go back and you're splitting up 11 is saying 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way until you get to 11, and then you stop. And at the end, count up your numbers, just like Roscoe and Bruno, to see if it's even or odd. If they're even, they have the same amount. If they're odd, they don't have the same amount.
Love it. Thank you. I love your, I don't know if people could see Tori in their screen, but she did some like hand motions. Like I have 11 and I'm saying 1 for you, 1 for me, 1 for you, 1 for me. And it made it really sticky too. You can imagine that's the actions she used in her model too. So kids are like, oh, right. 1 for you, 1 for me, 1 for you, 1 for me. Thank you. Okay. We had another error, but we're going to keep going on so that we can talk about R48. So R48, there's not much to say except that it is very much an extension of 46 and 47 with a focus on even numbers. And so hopefully this day we get kids to a place where they can generalize, where they can begin to say something is always true or about even numbers or always true about odd numbers. And so I would love everyone to pull up their exemplar response here. This is the turn and talk. What is true about all even numbers? Give an example. You either have it typed out or on your paper. Start putting it into the chat. Don't send yet. Give you guys about 30 seconds. Once you've got your ideal student response, you can just give me like a thumb up. Maybe about 10 more seconds. All right, getting ready to press send. If you're not ready, it's okay. I don't want to stress you out, but I'd also want to just honor our time. So everybody press send on their ideal student response. If it's there in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, great. Now take a minute to read through everybody's. And then I would love to hear thoughts around one that you think is truly exemplar, a place you want to push.
I love Becca's example. I think that she was like really clear and concise about that. Of course, splitting even numbers into equal groups, and then also if it's even, you can put those groups together in a number sentence to get back to the total. I didn't even think about the number sentence, but I think that's something I could push myself on and do when I'm doing my exemplar response.
Thank you. What else?
I really like Lizzie's saying, like, she gave both of the options of we can split them into 2 equal groups, and we can also like skip count by 2s. And if I say the number, then I know it's even.
Mm-hmm. What else? I feel like I don't see, maybe I'm wrong, I don't see an example in anyone's, right? Like I actually think the example is where we can really see understanding. And so I would love to push everybody to think about how with their narrated think time, we could get kids to generate an example based on what they have created as their conjecture that is always true for even numbers. So take a minute to think, like, what can you say after you launch this question before you send kids to breakout rooms that will help them generate an example that helps them prove that it's always true? Take a minute to think, and then I'd love to hear from people. All right, what do you guys think? What might your narrated think time sound like to help get kids to their examples and their own ideas?
I was thinking having them use their whiteboards and actually drawing out one for me, one for you, one for me, one for you. Maybe like stop there or something. Like, oh, my number's 4. Look, I've got 2 equal groups. So maybe pushing them just to like, oh, draw it out. Draw an even model. So one for me, one for you, one for me, one for you. Because I don't want to quite give them like an even number in case they do like an odd number. Because then you could be like, oh, is that an even group? I see 2 on one side, 3 on the other. But maybe just pushing them to draw the model, and then they're like, oh, I remember.
I love that idea of like having, sorry, I'm trying to go back, having kids come up with an example, and they may not do that unless you cue them to, right? So like, okay, so we're going to think about what's true about all even numbers. So maybe you're thinking a number is even if, or every number that is even. Okay, those are some things we know, but what about an example? Oh, maybe you could get your whiteboard out and think of an example of an even number and prove on your whiteboard why it's even, right? Like that kind of narrated think time. What else?
Right. I was going to say also, like, even if you say, like, think about a number that you think is even and try to prove it to yourself. Because even if they come up with an odd and they think, oh, this isn't even because after I do my example, these don't have the same amount on each side.
Love that, right? And like even as you were narrating that, Tori, like that narration that followed that, like think of a number you think is even. Oh, pass it out, one for you, one for me. Now what makes it even? Oh, right, like helping support their thinking and what they're doing with all those little like scaffolds along the way. That will get kids to say like an even number can always make 2 equal groups. For example, 10 can make 5 and 5. An even number is also a number we say when we skip count by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, right? Like we actually don't want to hear just like form responses. We really want them to make sense of it within a number that they're thinking about and they can ground their knowledge in. Okay, terrific. Oh my goodness, why didn't anyone cut me off? I'm so bad. Oh my goodness. Okay, someone, we need a timekeeper for our meetings. Okay, I'm going to send you guys a survey, and we'll think about what our meeting next week might look like. So I'm going to let everyone go because I'm 1 minute over. I'm so sorry. You guys know I could just keep going and keep going. You got to cut me off. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for your extra minute. Thank you so much for your incredible contributions and thoughts and ideas. And I'll see everyone next week. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Thanks, Symphony. All right, bye, guys.